Welcome to Plates and Palates. I'm Jenny Handley, curator of the annual JHP Gourmet Guide with its plate ratings and editor of our bi-monthly magazine, Gourmet Guide. I'm going to be taking you to secret spots, to meet chefs, and to find out what happens behind the scenes. Today, I'm chatting to Spencer Fondaumiere, who is one of only 2 ASI diploma certified sommeliers in Africa. So, wow, I'm an esteemed company. Welcome to the show.
No, thank you very much, Jenny. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
I think this is a real connection, food, wine. However, not everybody knows that Spencer is also a qualified chef. So you work in the industry, in hospitality, advising about wine and brand. Tell me a little bit about that.
So yes, I started my career in hospitality. From a very young age, I thought I wanted to be a chef. And then I was a chef, and then I realized I didn't want to be a chef. Then it was a very short hop from the back of house to the front of house. Now that is a much longer and very interesting story, but mostly through coincidence, I found myself working in a sommelier position, not necessarily qualified as a sommelier at that time, purely because I was interested in wine more than anything else. I was very fortunate. The owner of the restaurant at the time, a gentleman named Neil Grant, was the head of the South African Sommeliers Association. And his words when I interviewed with him was, "But if you're interested in wine, what you don't know, I'll teach you, and you can learn everything else on the way." And I've learned quite a lot, and it's been a long, long way since. So.
But you've learned a lot, but I also love the way you share your knowledge. So I've learned so much in discussing at length and often about a restaurant experience, how it relies so heavily on the food, on the chef, on the wine, on the sommelier, and also more recently on other interesting beverage pairings. So right. I think there's always everything's ever evolving. Right. One never knows everything. And it's exciting to learn what's next.
Absolutely. It's an ever-evolving times at the moment. But I mean, even if you just think back, and obviously you've been doing this for a long time, if you think of the offerings that you'd get at an upmarket fancy restaurant 3 years ago, 4 years ago versus what you get now, it's the change has been so much more, so many more experiential things are happening, so many newer additions are being introduced to menus, both, as you mentioned, as alcohol and non-alcoholic space. I think also with cuisine and the emphasis on natural ingredients more than, there was a time there was a lot of engineering of ingredients to look and taste and feel different from what they were. Very exciting time, but a lot is changing quite quickly, yes.
So I think the expectations of the diner also changes as we go. And I find it quite interesting. They're always expecting more. They perceive value to be more about an interesting experience and actually what they're paying for the dining time. But time is of the essence. They don't want to spend as long at the table
right.
as they used to before. So it's amazing how there was a sort of BC, before COVID and after. And that definitely globally is a trend. People are wanting lighter. They're wanting to drink less. There's much more emphasis on healthy food, the origin of the ingredient. They want to know more. They're very well informed and they like to know about the ingredient. They'll ask questions about the technique. I think we're dealing with a much more informed diner. I would assume, and put me right if I'm wrong, it's exactly the same on the beverage side.
My personal opinion was born a very interesting trend. I think obviously it's very well documented that people are drinking less, that wine sales are plummeting. Then that's the word to use, really plummeting. There's people who are selling less wine, people are drinking less wine. That's an absolute fact. And not just wine, I mean across the board with all alcoholic beverages. And there's a lot of finger pointing, mostly at young people and the Gen Zs, and the story going, Gen Zs don't drink that much. But my own personal opinion, I think it speaks to something you just said, which is time. And I think post-COVID, we all just have less time. Before COVID, there was a healthier respect that after 5 o'clock, the day was done for most people. And now everyone's working after work, everyone's working later, everyone has a hustle, and every hustle has a side hustle. So obviously people are spending less time in restaurants. But I think practically, especially with wine, people would drink wine and eat food as an experience. In the days of 12, 13 course menus that started at 6 p.m. and finished at 11, and that was an experience. That doesn't happen anymore. No one has that time. People are in and out in 2 hours. So a lot of people more on the domestic front are like, we're not going to sit down in front of the TV, have a meal and drink some wine. It's a quick order something on the go. And there's less opportunity for people to drink wine. And I think that's one of the more practical reasons why we're drinking less. Sad.
So part of a restaurant experience for me is I feel like I learn so much from a sommelier. There's always something that I hear that I haven't heard before. There's otherwise a wine or another beverage that I haven't tried before, or a combination. And I think that's what makes that food and wine journey so exciting. So I would love to know, for the average person who doesn't know everything about wine but loves it, if they go to a blind tasting, how can they understand and determine what the varietal of the wine is, what the terroir is, and what the vintage is? Because sometimes we're given blind tastings in a restaurant, and I'm thinking, could you with a little bit of your expertise on this?
Indeed, that's actually quite a complex question. I think maybe I'll start right at the beginning. You said someone who enjoys wine, maybe doesn't know that much about it. And I think that's probably the first place that we should start. And that's where a lot of people get lost, is that they enjoy it, but then they're intimidated by it. So they don't allow themselves to enjoy it enough. They sort of think that, someone else knows more than me. They're going to say the right thing, or they're going to, the number of times I tasted people, they're like, you're probably going to tell me I'm wrong, but I taste, or I'm picking up pomegranate. I think, and I think it's marvelous. If you, as a person, are number one, have an interest in wine, but number two, have the clarity to be able to identify a flavor. I think that's really the start of it. You don't need a sommelier certification to do something like that. But if you pick up a glass, smell roses, and say this smells like roses, you are 100% on the way to being there. And I mean, wine, unfortunately, comes with a lot of baggage, and it can be so intimidating in so many ways. And really, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I think of my own personal journey with wine. I really only got into it intensely maybe 15 years ago. And just by being curious, there's so many doors that open that you don't limit or inhibit yourself from what you learn because you're intimidated by it. Now, to the second part of your question, how would you be able to discern terroir of it? That does come with practice more than anything else. And
so to start with, I always think, firstly, it's to enjoy the aroma of the wine, which I always think we should be doing with our food as well, and people don't. So don't start me on that. I think they miss out on a whole element of dining experience by not actually taking time to go, this is, what I detect in the aroma, the opens of the food.
Yes.
And what does it remind me of? Because nostalgia is such a big part of a dining industry.
Huge part of it.
I was watching game wings, and we should be tapping into them. So I personally would always start by enjoying that, and then thinking, what does it conjure up in my
what memories does it invoke in you? Yes.
And that's for me personally how I start enjoying my wine.
Great. Now, if I was to take you down that road a little bit further,
and welcome to do it practically.
Oh, could I? Okay, cool. Well, I feel we do have some wine in front of us.
Of course.
Let me open this bottle, which is the bottle you brought. It's the Handley Cap Classique. Food, wine is a sensory experience.
Yes.
And that's important because there are not many things that are. Watching TV is not a sensory experience, right? You're not engaging all your senses, entertaining as the television show might be. Enjoying it's not immersive. Where food and wine, absolutely. And so I think you speak to it brilliantly when you say you get the food and you look at it first and you're like, whoa, that looks nice. That creates memory. And then you smell it and you're like, whoa, that smells nice. And that creates memory. And then, then eventually you taste it. And so you put all that together and that completes that sensory experience, something you go with. So now if you go in a position where you do all those things, and then someone tells you that this is Chardonnay, or tells you this is Cap Classique, it's a brut. It's a brut, meaning that it's made with both Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, potentially Pinot Meunier as well. And you taste it, and it takes you back to that moment where you're tasting it. You have this beautiful plate in front of you that's sitting in good company. The anticipation for what the evening holds is brilliant. And you taste this wine and you think, this is magic. This is what needs to be in my glass. I'm really, really enjoying this. That becomes a reference point for you for what a brut Pinot Noir Chardonnay blend is. Cap Classique this is really interesting because they're in Hard Bay, which is a whole other interesting conversation to start and talk about different areas and new and upcoming regions. But let's just say it's even more practical. There's somewhere like Robertson that's really well known for making Cap Classique. That's a reference point, right? So then the next time you are tasting wine or someone offers you bubble, you're like, oh, is that from Robertson? Or I don't know that label, but I see it's from Robertson. And last time I had a wine from that area, it was this and this was the memory. And that goes a long way, because that starts to build up your memory bank of enjoyable experiences and things that, most importantly, you know your own taste, you know what you like. And then you just build that around it. And I think that's probably the most practical way of describing it. Yeah.
Also to give it the time and the consideration that it deserves. So always try something new. I remember one of the somms said to me when I was reviewing a restaurant, she said, never order your favorite wine. You're limiting yourself. I went, oh, but everybody has favorites. She said, yes. But just think of how many hundreds of wines are produced all the time. You need to try as many as possible. So why go back to what you know?
That's good
enough. Forward instead of stepping back. So I've always thought about, I like trying something just because I haven't tried it before. Whether I like it or not doesn't really matter. But well, I think I'm going to like this.
I think you will. I mean, it's bubbles. Everyone likes bubbles. So it's.
And I'm interested to see that you chose these glasses instead of the long.
Right. Yes. So yes, and I'm glad the long ones are here as well. So it's an interesting thing about the enjoyment of sparkling wine. And cheers.
Cheers.
Really important consideration is what differentiates it from normal still wine is the bubble. It's the fizz. I've done quite a lot of work with bubbles, both competition and otherwise. And what you're looking for is, what the bubble does is it amplifies so many more things. It amplifies flavor, it amplifies texture, because you don't have that in a still wine. And what's really important is that you want to give the bubble a chance. Like my own words, I like to say, to live its best life. Now, if you look at it and you look at it really practically, right from the bottom, we see there's a little bead of bubbles that start right at the bottom and they come all the way to the top. And much like a firework, they go all the way and then boom, right at the top, they explode. You want the bubble to completely do that, to express itself completely. And only then do you absolutely unlock the flavor that it's keeping behind it. And when you have these more narrow flutes, it concentrates that to the top. What will happen is these bubbles end up bumping up against each other, and then they pop without completely living their full life or going through that whole journey. And it sounds a bit airy-fairy, but honestly, it does work. And I mean, if I pour some in this and this, there's a world of difference. But what you do find, and you can see it from the top, is that you can see every bubble coming right to the top and exploding. Just much like a firework. It aids the ability to enjoy this to the maximum of its potential. Now, what would happen often in these, you'll find they'll froth often, because that's the bubbles clashing against each other and just exploding without reaching the natural beats. Generally, champagne flutes with a much wider center rim or much wider top do better in that respect, like the traditional champagne coupe, for example. Yeah.
Good. Well, cheers to that.
Cheers, indeed. I often find again, bubbles are something that are quite misunderstood and are made in very, many different styles. But this I think is a really, really good example of it. You get a lot of, ideally what you want to try, it's called, the technical name is autolytic characteristics. So toasted bread, brioche, those notes, and then interplayed very nicely with fruity notes. This being it's not only 2 years on the lease, you still get quite a lot of freshness. So you personally picking up lots of apple and green apple, fresh fruit, but then also layers of that brioche and that for me brings that complexity, which is what you really want. That otherwise is just a fizzy drink. It's just got apples and berries in it.
Well, I'm always going to remember that, and I think we should drink a toast to living the good life.
Amen. Yes.
Okay, so Spencer, we have now cheers to the good life, but I have one question. I want to know a little bit about something new. I asked you to bring me something that would be interesting.
Yes. I brought a bottle of the Radford Dale Venom Gamay Noir. Gamay Noir is one of the newer additions to the South African vineyard. For a long time, even globally, was known and recognized, but not pursued as widely. It has the unfortunate geographic position of being just south of Burgundy, so it's always been the poorer cousin of. Or Burgundy on a budget to many people. But what's happening in the sort of the global space at the moment is Burgundy prices have become super expensive, and suddenly it has made this a lot more interesting. And Radford Dale are pioneers in many ways in terms of biodynamic farming, and also just some of the more interesting varietals that they've been able to plant and work with. Disciples, I think, lack of a better word, of the Gamay grape. and they were the first people to plant it in South Africa. And as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain I'm not, this is the only example of a straight bottled Gamay in South Africa. They have a vineyard in Stellenbosch, which is where this one's from, and then they planted, and so they believe in it so much they've planted new vineyard in biodynamically in Elgin as well, which will be coming online quite soon. And you know what's really interesting, I think, just from a more practical sense, and it's something that the South African wine industry is really waking up to at the moment, is that it is warm. It's warm and it gets warmer. For a long time, we maybe didn't always cultivate the grapes or cultivars that worked to the best of what our terroir gives. There's a large movement now towards planting varietals that do much better in warmer, water scarce conditions. Gamay maybe not the top example of, but certainly one that does thrive in environments like these. And I think more and more in the next 5 to 10 years, and we spoke about change earlier, you will find on the shelves in the supermarkets and places you buy wine that there are more differences. There are more and more different varietals that you wouldn't have known before emerging and doing really well. I think it's great. It's great for our industry, because I think as it evolves, we keep with the times, even when the water scarcity becomes more of a pinch and the temperatures get higher, then the wine industry will not be under too much threat if you continue to plant the right things in the right spaces. It's
wonderful that they're looking ahead.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure many will follow.
Yes. Well, let's hope so. But very practically, when you taste this, it's a lovely example. This is in their Venom range, which is a little bit more of a lifestyle, easy drinking, not the sort of wine you'd probably put away for 10 to 15 years, but something you could enjoy now at a braai, at home, on a Tuesday or Wednesday night after work, or something of the sort. Yes. But yeah, it's like, and it's very easy drinking, fairly low alcohol, lots of ripe red fruit to the fore. Yeah, quite drinkable. Some might say quite
Smashable. I can do that.
Ideally, you would want to serve it just a little bit colder. It is a wine that shows better at a slightly lower temperature.
I get a little touch of pepper.
Yes, absolutely. And you would be, so there you go. And you would be right. That is something that is commonly found in this varietal. So yes, white pepper.
And what would you pair this with? That's always my question. I'd love to know. Now, here's the one. Now, what am I going to have to eat at the same time?
Great. I often think when I got that very overt red fruit character, I generally like to think, I think meat pork with the acidity as well. I would love something quite salty, very simple, something like a prosciutto or a Parma ham, thinly shaped, some melon on a crudité or something like that. That would be a very simple, but very practical thing, and it would be keeping with. I mean, it's the sort of thing you're going to drink after a day of work. Get home, get some bread, put on the side. I suppose if you have prosciutto in your fridge or a slice of ham, whatever really works. But for me, it works in that spectrum of that salty and yeah.
Good. Well, fortunately, we both love what we do, so we're not rushing home from work.
No.
But when one goes home to something like this, then you say cheers and to the good life and to work and play.
Amen.
Yes.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks
Thank you very much.
You're
welcome.
Love chatting.